Hello and welcome to this episode of the Game Plan Podcast, hosted by College Baseball Advisors. I'm your host, Wayne Mazzoni. My background is 30 years as a college baseball coach, current owner of collegebaseballadvisors.com, where I help kids and families navigate the craziness of the recruiting process. For more information about what I do, please visit collegebaseballadvisor.com. On today's episode, we have John Szefc, the head baseball coach at Virginia Tech. Great interview with a guy that's really, you can tell, an old school baseball guy who paid his dues and has made it to the ACC and does a great job at Virginia Tech. Prior to that, he was the head coach at University of Maryland. Previous to that, he was at both Kansas State and Kansas. Before that, he was at Louisiana, Lafayette. And prior to that, was the head coach at Marist College, where he basically put Marist on the map for college baseball. He played at Drexel, actually went to UConn first, played 2 years there under Andy Baylock, then transferred to Drexel, started coaching at Drexel before he took a job at Sacred Heart. Actually talks about a little bit how he was out of coaching, and he was fortunate to get back in to Sacred Heart with the help of Andy Baylock, and then got the job at Marist, and obviously did a tremendous job from Marist on, and is really just a lot of lessons learned. A couple of them that I took away. Number one, he wants low maintenance players. Number one. Number two, no ego. You can have anything you want. Just don't be it all about me when you're playing on his college baseball team. So I think you'll find this podcast really informative. I'd like to remind you that this podcast is made possible through the generous support of the Mohegan Sun Baseball Coaches Convention that takes place every January at the Mohegan Sun Casino. This year is January 15th to 17th, 2026. The convention's in its 23rd year. Those of you that have been to it know how fantastic it is, how accessible all the pro players, the pro coaches, the college coaches are. Very interactive, great vendor area, great live demo areas. It's just a tremendous, tremendous event. Please take a look at their website, baseballcoachesclinic.com, for more information and to register. And without further delay, here is my conversation with John Szefc, head baseball coach at Virginia Tech. All right, John. So first of all, I'm excited to. I love doing these because I love in our modern world where we're so busy with 10 million things, we actually can connect with another person for a straight, set amount of time and not be distracted. So I'm pumped to hear. I'm also probably way less busy than you, where you guys have got guys back on campus and a million things going on in the modern world of college baseball. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me.
Sure, absolutely.
So I always like to start this way because obviously this is about mostly your coaching and helping kids that are high school players, college players, college coaches, etc. But when you were growing up, obviously baseball was a big part of your sports youth.
Right.
Were you a baseball only guy in Middletown, or were you playing a bunch of sports when you were growing up?
Actually, when I grew up in the 70s, thank God. And I look back at my youth and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Unfortunately, just like most young kids, you don't know how good you have it until it's gone, But no, when I grew up in the 70s, there was no fall baseball. There was no weight training, none of it. So I played baseball in the spring, in the summer. I played soccer actually in the fall because I never got involved with football, and then when I got to high school, our high school didn't have football. I played goalie in soccer, and I absolutely loved it. And I could have gone. I got offered a scholarship to Dowling College, a Division II school on Long Island.
No longer open doors there. Look,
yeah. I went on a visit too to play baseball and soccer, and I actually really loved playing goalie in soccer. And then I played basketball, and I quite honestly, unfortunately, I wasn't able. I didn't have the luck. I wasn't fortunate enough to play for and I hate to say this publicly, but I wasn't I like the greatest coach I ever played for was Dick O'Neill, my high school basketball coach. And I played for some pretty good guys at John S. Burke High School, Paul DeSalle. I played for Jim Osborne. Some really good coaches. And I was lucky enough to do. But to answer your question, I played 3 sports, and I enjoyed it. And there was no fall baseball, and I just played whatever sport was in season, and that was it. That's what you did in the 70s and the 80s, basically.
Yeah, it's funny because don't take this the wrong way, but most of the guys I get on here are younger than me. You're a little bit older than me. I'm 56. I think you're probably 58, right? So we grew up in the same era, man. Like you everything you just said completely resonated with me. But man, in the world of in 2025, it's incredible how different it is for a kid in high school now, how it's become so year round. And I guess I'll just ask you, not that you and I are going to sit here and change it, but are you think that's a good route that it's gone, or would you wish it would back to the '70s where you could just play a bunch of sports?
Well, I have two sons. My younger son is a rising junior. We had our kids late, so he's a 27, and he's a three-sport guy, and I think it's great. I love it. He's in baseball. He's a pitcher infielder, and he plays quarterback on a football team.
Mm,
It's him. I'm just using him as an example.
perfect. Yep.
Him away from baseball, which I think is good. He's a pitcher. He puts the ball down, and if it were up to me, I'd go back to the '70s and play multiple sports. I think it's good for, and my older son is not that way. He actually plays for Billy Wagner, a guy who just got inducted into the Hall of Fame at the Miller School in Crozet, Virginia. So he's different than my younger son Sam. And I don't have a problem with either one of them actually, Wayne. Honestly, but if you put a gun to my head, I'd say I'd rather have a guy be a multi-sport guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny too. I think this will resonate with you, which was like I'll have kids that I'm working with for recruiting, and like a 13-year-old talks about not only just playing baseball but being a PO, and I go, dude, when I was 13, if you told me I had to pitch only, I'd hit you with a bat. Like, what are you talking about, man? It's a different world.
It is, and I don't know that it's better, but it's different, and it's not bad. It's just different.
Yeah, yeah,
So guys like me and you um, have got to be open to change, and over time I've kind of embraced that because I've had to, and I don't think there's anything wrong with either way. Like if it's my son Sam, play as many sports as you want. If it's my other son John Michael and you want to play baseball and weight training, and God bless it. I don't I don't think it's wrong. It's just different. But I don't think there's one right way actually in this day and age.
yeah.
But again, if you gave me a choice, I'm telling you to play different sports.
Yeah, no, I like that, and kind of to move off of that, you mentioned obviously Dowling, which I'm from Long Island, so Dowling hits home, but
Yeah. I remember the visit. It was 1984, I think, and I went on a visit with my father, and it was a great place. I remember it pretty clearly actually. But I wanted to play baseball in college, and so that's kind of I ended up going to UConn and playing for Andy Baylock, for a few years, and then I ended up transferring and going to Drexel in Philadelphia, and I lived in Philadelphia for 6 years and met my wife there, and I was really lucky. I was very lucky actually, so I can't complain.
how about like again back to our era, there was no showcase camps, there was no technology. So what do you remember about how did you get to UConn? What was the path that got you there?
Man,
I asked you a tough one.
yeah, I really, back then you're sending out letters, and there was no. Here's the other thing: there were no camps.
None.
Like you weren't going to UConn's baseball camp.
No.
I mean, I didn't go to Coach Baylock's camp. He never saw me play. So for me, it came down to two schools between UConn and Rider.
Yep.
And Sonny Pitaro came to see me play a game in Florida, New York, in 1985, and he offered me a roster spot, but not any kind of scholarship dollars. And God bless Sonny. Sonny's a great dude, man. And I ended up coaching against him when I was at Marist and he was at Rider in the NEC, and we had wars, man. Wars with that, And I to this day I respect him till the cows come home. But I ended up going to UConn. I went there for 2 years. I played for Andy and a guy named Mitch Petrus. His assistant, Mitch, is a great guy. And it just didn't quite work out for me. I wasn't good enough. And I ended up transferring it to Drexel. And this is before the transfer portal.
Of course. Yep.
So I transferred there. I played for Bill Myers, and I met a lot of great friends and had a good experience. And, I ended up, I had to, it was going to take me 4.5 years to graduate. So I was going back to Drexel in the fall of 1989. I had to go back to graduate. And they made a coaching change, and they brought in a guy named Don Maines, who's a tremendous guy and a great coach. And he called me up, and he's like, hey, I don't have any assistants. Would you like to help me out? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be there. I'd love to help you out. And that's how it all started. And I never had like, hey, I want to be a college coach. I never thought that, ever. But I love being around the game. And I ended up, the weirdest part about it was I ended up working in the fall of '89 for Don and living with some guys that were on the team that were friends of mine.
Right.
Now, if you want to talk about awkward, you're living with guys you're coaching. And it's still awkward to this day. In 2025, it's a hard thing for anybody to do. But I did it in '89, and some of those guys are still some of my best friends.
So a couple of things there. I don't want to cut you off, but first of all, Andy Baylock hasn't come up a lot on these podcasts I've done, 40 something. I mean, Andy is an institution. He's still active. I still see him up at Mohegan Sun. He's involved in UConn. He may have actually finally stopped throwing batting practice, although who knows? The guy, the guy was, every time you'd see him, he'd be like, I just threw batting practice. He's 80-some years old throwing batting practice. But, I mean, that's also, what do you remember about him as a coach in person, at UConn?
He was a good person. I learned, here's the thing now, he probably taught me more about coaching the game than maybe the game itself, if that makes sense.
It does, yep.
This is 2025. I used the academic cards for our team that he instituted. I used them as a player in 1985.
Wow.
40 years later, I use the same thing, and they still work. That's one. Two, when I got out of coaching in 1993 at Drexel, and I said, I got to make some money. I got to go to work in New York City. So I worked in New York City for 10 months for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation and hated it. It was bad. but it showed me what I didn't want to do in life. It was really valuable to me. And I got on the horn with a few people I knew, Andy Baylock being one of them, who was as good a person as the day is long. And I said, Coach, I got to get back into the game. I got to get back into coaching and teach whatever. So he hooked me up with a guy named Nick Giaquinto.
Know him well.
Yeah. I took a GA position for Nick. This was in 1995, and you know Sacred Heart as well as anybody.
Yeah.
And so I was going to go back and be a high school coach and be a high school history teacher. And I already had a master's from Temple. I was going to get a second master's to get certified to teach.
Yep.
And God bless him, he set me up with Nick, who played at UConn. Obviously, Nick was a great football player and he was a great coach. And that's how and I can talk about this guy and that guy helped me get going in coaching, but Andy Baylock might have the whole thing maybe doesn't happen without him, because he got me back. He got me the chance with Nick in 1995 at Sacred Heart, and that's how the whole thing kind of happened, to be honest with you.
It's really this is why I love doing these, because listen, you're at Virginia Tech, you're an ACC head coach with an unbelievable track record, and yet you didn't always think about coaching until Don Maines says, hey, you're here anyway, you want to help out, right? Never. And then, you probably got paid nothing for that. Then you go take this real life job, and you go, that sucks,
I didn't listen, I worked for 8 years in baseball, 8 years in college baseball before I ever got a full-time job at Marist. And this was 1999, and it was for $24,000. And at the time when I took the job in 1995, it was for $10,000. And you ran a camp. It was a part-time job. You ran a camp. And when they made it full time for 24 grand in '99, they took the camp away. So they ran the camp.
Right.
So I made 24 grand. I had benefits, God bless it.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm not knocking Marist. Marist,
No, of course not.
so I have no problem. Like Tim Murray, I talk to him to this day. He's still the AD at Marist. And I thank him to death. And I remember when I interviewed with Tim Murray way back in 1995. But, nowadays, young guys, they want to make money and they think they need to make money. And I get it. Everybody needs to make money, right? But, man, I work. Hey, when I first took that job in 95 at Marist for 10 grand, my father paid my car insurance because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford anything. I look back at it now and I don't know how the hell I afforded anything.
Right.
Back then on 10 grand a year. I mean, think about it, right?
No, right. You're losing significant money doing that job, right? And here, it's funny because I was going to say to you, I'm like, man, you coached at Drexel, you get out of coaching, you get back in at Sacred Heart, and then you get the Marist head coaching. I mean, that's impressive. But then you're alluding to it that it was a part-time gig for 10 grand. So, but then obviously it became full-time. But also, I guess there's two questions to unpack there. One is, how was that first time head coach taking over that program and a still young guy? Were you like, hey, I'm ready for this, or was there a lot of learning to do running that program?
There was a lot of learning because I actually I coached in the ACBL, the old ACBL, right?
Yeah,
the ACBL is still around now, but then I coached the New York Generals and. Buddy Payne, an old scout with the Pirates and the Indians, gave me my first start there, and God bless him. He passed in 2008. But he knew Tim Murray, the AD at Marist, and that's how the whole thing. I mean, I wasn't really probably ready for that. To your point, but Buddy knew Tim, and it was a part-time job, and it kind of just went that way. But I will tell you this. I was blessed working, like coaching the Generals and then coaching Marist in 95, 96, because I had to make decisions. And some were right and some were wrong. And you kind of just learn from them, like you learn from your mistakes and you figured when you made a good decision to work, you're like, okay, well, I guess that's the way it's supposed to go. I don't know. I mean, I played my last game in 1995.
Right.
Up in Milford, New York, which is a neighboring town of Cooperstown. I actually went to the induction a month ago with my son, and we left Cooperstown because he plays for Billy.
Yeah.
And Milford. And it was the first time I went back to Milford, and I told him, I said, this is where I played my last game in 1995. So anyway, I don't want to get too nostalgic with you, but
no, it's great, yeah.
But the point of it is that like in 95 and 96, when I coached the Generals, when I coached at Marist, I didn't know anything from anything. I felt like I knew the game, and I just made decisions based on what I knew of the game. And one thing led to another, and I still say this to this day. Like, God bless the guys that get their first head job in the ACC or the SEC. Because I was lucky enough to get a head job at Marist and then at Maryland. So I was able to not have my first head job in the ACC.
Right.
Which I think even to this day, with all the distractions and extra money and resources and all the other stuff that's involved with it, I still think it's difficult to have your first job in a league like this, your first one.
Right.
It's best if you can, in my opinion, to get your first head job someplace else where you can learn and figure it out a little bit before you get into the fire, so to speak.
Totally makes sense. I want to ask you this about the time at Marist. You did a heck of a job at Marist. I mean, you guys went to 4 regionals. I mean, you really had a great success.
Yeah.
And obviously talked about, difficult. You probably, I could only imagine the assistance you might have had at that point where, like, you're barely paying you. What do you attribute that success to? Grinding it, great recruiting, great coaching. I mean, you know, how did you have such a great program while you were there?
Well, we had really good players. Like we just so I never had a full-time assistant there in 7 years, and quite frankly, I don't know that they still have any full-time assistants. I don't know. So basically, you're in a situation where you got to do it all yourself. You got to recruit, you got to coach. Now we were lucky; like we had some good part-time assistants there, guys like Jim Tyrell and Al Hamill, and just to name a few. Um, but if you look back at those rosters, like for instance, Chris Trask was our best arm at the time. He's a really big time coach, head coach at Army.
Yep.
Tim Bittner. I actually spent a lot of time now with Tim because Tim is a frontline national scout with the Kansas City Royals, and he works out of Richmond, and he, I tell a story. 1990. Oh, let me think about this for a second now. I'm sorry. 2001. We had 27 MAC conference games, all started by left-handed starters.
Really?
Bittner and a guy named Kevin Uhl, who made it to Double-A with the Cardinals. He was a 16th round pick of the Cardinals. So we had 27 games, 27 starts by left-handed arms. And that team won a game at the Stanford Regional. That was Stanford, Long Beach State, Texas, and Marist. I remember going to the pre-regional meeting, and it was
I can see where you're going with this, John.
Yeah, it was the head coach Mark Marquis.
Marquis, yep.
At the time at Stanford was like this legend, and then a guy named Dave Snow at Long Beach State. He was a Hall of Famer, and then this guy named Augie Garrido was at Texas. Texas was the 3 seed. And I go to that meeting, I'm like, geez, who the hell doesn't belong here, you know? We actually beat Long Beach State in that regional. But anyway, we had a lot of good players, man. Like, we had good, those dudes, not only were they good, those guys were tough. Like, those guys were, and if you look at it, like, they hung in there in pro ball for a while. A lot of those guys still work in pro ball as scouts or whatever. A guy like Bittner, for instance. Just good players, man. Like, good players, good people. I'll never forget, I'll tell you this one. So we had a guy on that team named Steve O'Sullivan. He's from Fordham Prep in the Bronx.
Yep.
And so I've been doing this now since the 80s, late 80s, right? In all those years, I've had probably 5 guys come on a visit wearing a shirt and tie. And O'Sullivan was one of them. And he came on this visit in 1998, and I can still remember it to this day. And all his mother asked for was that she just hoped he could get an opportunity to get a fair chance to play. And I'm like, you kidding me? Like, that kid's really good, you know?
Right.
He ended up being he was 20th round pick of the Cubs. Like, he played for a while in pro ball, but he was a hell of a college baseball player. Probably to this day, probably one of the best guys, if not the best guy ever coached. From top to bottom. And what I mean by that is baseball, academics, low maintenance. Man, I went to this guy's wedding, and he's handing out $20 bills to guys to get home safe. And I'm like, this is nuts, man. Like, he got married, up in New York. I remember going to his wedding. There's not a better. He works for the CIA, for the government now, But anyway, I'm really getting off on a tangent.
Well, something you said there, I don't know if has ever been done in the history of college baseball, is having 27 conference games started by left-handed pitchers. I don't know if there's a way to look it up, but I'd bet a good amount of money that that's never happened before or will happen again. But
it's hard. It's hard to do in this day and age because left-handed starters it's hard to come by.
Hard to come by. So after Marist, I think I have all your timeline right, but then you go to Louisiana Lafayette with Tony Robichaux. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so Tony has passed, but when I was coaching at Sacred Heart, we played a few times, and I remember just meeting him and talking with him. That guy was a baseball genius. What an unbelievable baseball guy. So I guess 2 questions with that. how did it come, by that you went from Marist, I mean, all the way down to Louisiana, and then what can you tell us about Tony?
Well, in 2000, when I was at Marist, we were the 4 seed at Louisiana Lafayette. They sent us there. I
Yep.
didn't know Lafayette, Louisiana from a box of Cheerios. So I learned about that then, and I thought, man, like this is a baseball place. This is like really interesting place. And 2 years later, when Wade Semino, their third base coach and their offensive recruiting stuff, he left to take the head job at Louisiana Tech. I remember contacting Tony and saying, hey, I'd really be interested in that. And I didn't really think anything would come of it. And it did. And, one thing leads to another. And I end up there in the fall of 2002. And I was there for 6 years. And, I learned a lot from Tony. Tony was obviously a great baseball guy and a great pitching guy. But he also was just as good a person as you'll ever run into. Man, I don't even know where to start talking about him. He was, I can remember just a lot of different, sitting in on a lot of different talks he'd have with players and his philosophy with us as coaches. And he was just, I don't know, man, I've never really thought about this one really deeply, but the one thing I would tell you about Tony is this. Probably maybe there's a lot of great things, but one thing I can always take away from him is like he was always the same guy. Mm-hmm. Whether you played well, whether you didn't play well, whether you got to recruit, whether you didn't get to recruit, he was never an emotional guy. Like he never rode the wave. It was always the same guy. Like you always knew what you were getting with Tony. And I tell you what, in this day and age, that's hard because everything's so based on wins and losses. And it's hard to stay on that same line, And Tony did. I was there from 02 to 08 before I went to Kansas. And, like, we had two of our kids there. And one of them, John Michael, my oldest son, is actually going to go play at Louisiana Lafayette for Matt Deggs a year from now. But Tony was a very consistent person. And just as good a person as you're ever going to run into. Obviously, his know-how of the game and coaching the game, that's kind of speaks for itself. I don't really get into that a whole lot, but what I get into more is Tony. Like, I mean, I was there having my first two kids. Like, I'd never had a kid before. I didn't know anything about that, and he never blinked. He treated you the same whether you had one kid or 20 kids or no kids.
Yeah, it's interesting though you mentioned because your son's going there, which I didn't know is, and most people, and just as you said, you didn't really know much about it until you went in that regional. I didn't know much about it, but we went there about 3 times when I was coaching, and I played in a lot of cool places or coached in a lot of cool places. You, with your now experience, have been in probably an unbelievable amount of cool environments. But I'll tell you one thing: the fans and the people there in Louisiana Lafayette, they're pretty. They like some adult beverages. They like good food. And they let you have it on the field, and then they'll feed you after. Like that's what I remember. They're all over you, but they're good people.
Yeah, they are good people. They feed you, and I don't know, like all my kids, all 3 of my kids, their godmothers live there.
Right.
So it's like we don't have like blood family there, but we have people we consider to be family there.
Yeah.
And it's just, I've told my son this, like, it's a good baseball place. Like, they're just good people. I don't know how else to say it. It's just,
no, yeah, you're right. It is.
People, it's good baseball. And I look back at the 6 years I spent there, and it's the kind of place that you could live your whole life in
Yeah.
if you want. If you were so like if you're from the South and you're looking for a place to raise your wife, raise your kids, that would be a place. I
Yeah.
think.
I totally agree. Let's talk about the Kansas time. Obviously, you go to Kansas first, and then you go to K-State after.
Yeah.
Again, was that just now, enough, the way people like you to get where you get, you got to move around and take step up at each job you go to. So I'm assuming the move to Kansas and then to Kansas State, these are just now more responsibilities. This is bigger programs. Is that ultimately what the moves are about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kansas was in the Big 12, which they still are, and I got Rich Price called me from there, and I mean, Rich is about as good a person as I've ever been around. Like, I look at him as being like a father figure mentor to me, like a baseball mentor. Um, Taught me a lot about the game, taught me a lot about how to treat people, good connections there. The assistant, the number two guy there, guy named uh, Sean Lester, was from Connecticut, who actually played at UConn, went to UConn. I'm still friendly with him. I talk with him frequently. I kind of learned a lot about what I would say big time college athletics there.
Right.
Not that Marist and Lafayette weren't. Kansas with Kansas basketball, that's big time athletics, man. Like they got 9 people working in the compliance department there.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and it's funny. Like I lived with Rich Price for a full semester, the fall semester of fall of '08, and him and his wife took me in. And we have a new assistant coach living in our house here now in Virginia. Oh man, I don't know what's that. 18 years later, something like that. So like, Rich taught me a lot of stuff outside of baseball. You know, he taught me a lot about how to treat people and how consistent to be. He also like we had we had we played against teams in the Big 12 at the time: Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Baylor. I mean, just Max Muncy at Baylor, for instance.
Yeah.
Just, one high level guy after another. But yet we play with them, we beat them, and at times I was like, how in the hell are we beating these people? Like these guys. I remember one time coaching third base against Oklahoma State. They had 3 picks in the top 5 rounds. Thinking to myself, I just hope we can make contact with these guys and win a game. And so Rich was a master at getting the most out of his players. He was tremendous, and he's helped me along the way. And I still talk to him. My son, he actually is a head coach in the Alaskan League right now, and my oldest son might go play for him next summer. I mean, it's just a great guy. And then when Brad Hill called me at K-State, I mean, it was a pretty dramatic financial raise. It was a chance to run the offense in the Big 12. It was. I made a lot of moves over the years. That was the toughest one of all because, like baseball, people don't leave in the middle of the year. That was in January
Right.
of 2010.
Right.
And that one was different because I had a real big connection to Rich, as I still do. And that was tough. That was a tough one. Looking back on it, it was personally right for me and my family just because it kind of got us to this point. But that was really hard, man. Like leaving Rich in Kansas at the time. But so I wasn't from Kansas. So the difference between KU and K-State, it didn't mean it wasn't like a thing to me because I didn't have a connection there because I was from New York,
Right. Right. Right.
So, but I was lucky that each step that I took was, looking back on it, was the right step at the time.
Yeah, and listen, obviously, in a perfect scenario, you're not leaving mid-semester, but at the same time, as we've already talked about, as many coaches do, you paid your dues, and you have this opportunity to better yourself significantly financially, it's kind of a no-brainer. You don't want to leave in that stage, but it's a no-brainer move, obviously.
Yeah, I
Really.
had two little kids, and the money helped a lot at the time. And I mean, again, it was very difficult. And I love the University of Kansas. It's a great place. And guys like Lester and Rich and like um, uh, Coach Graves, our pitching coach at the time, Ryan Graves. Like those guys are really good people, man. Like as good of people as you'll ever run into, and really good coaches, good athletic people. And I still use stuff today that I got from the 2.5 years I spent at KU, and I use a lot of stuff I got from Brad Hill when I was at K State. Um, one of the guys I recruited at Louisiana Lafayette, who didn't come to Lafayette, who went to K State and was an assistant at K State when I was there, and I took with me to Maryland, who's now the head coach at the University of Alabama, Rob Vaughn.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of connections there. Like I have like 3 of the guys on the current University of Tennessee staff. I was with them at K State. Ross Kivett, I coached Ross. He's the recruiting coordinator at Tennessee, and Sean McCann, who's the video guy at Tennessee, and Josh Reynolds, who is the kind of pitching coach in waiting at Tennessee. Like that was with all those guys at K State. Now they're running the country at Tennessee.
Right.
I mean, Vitello, I was we got to be good friends when he was an assistant at TCU and later at Arkansas. I mean, I've known Tony for a long time. That guy's Michael Jackson right now in college baseball.
Right.
God bless him. That's just what it is. Like, the guy's awesome. He's done a hell of a job. But I knew Tony before he was Michael Jackson. Before all the, so whatever. Anyways.
No, but listen, you've been around long enough coaching guys that like you're recruited and then they get drafted and make the big leagues. Like it is interesting at our age to see the big picture of like you knew this guy when, just like you talked about Rob, and now Rob's at Alabama.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Back to the Maryland, you obviously now take over, get the head coaching job at Maryland. When, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't, we're not here to talk badly about programs, but I believe before you took over, Maryland was not a household baseball name. It was not a program that had the success that it did. When you got there, you basically put Maryland baseball on the map with, going to 2 supers. And I mean, is that accurate to say? Not that you're here to pat yourself on the back, but Maryland wasn't winning regionals prior to you getting there.
No, they hadn't. But I was really lucky to go in there because the guy I followed there was Eric Backish,
right?
And that coach at Clemson, and he recruited some really good players, man. Like when we walked in there, they had a guy named Brandon Lau who was a freshman, and Lamont Wade, and Jose Quas and Kevin Martier and Charlie White, guys that were all like really good pros, and obviously Lau and Wade are big leaguers, and we were able to recruit some pretty good guys like Mike Schwarn, who was probably the best pitcher I ever coached from South Jersey, that went there and pitched in the big leagues for Boston for a while. So but I was lucky that when we went in and we followed Eric, and Eric, there's some really good players there, like really good players there, man.
No, that's actually interesting you say that, because you do see many times when a coach goes into a new place, it's like flat out clearing house with players and trying to get their player. You're basically saying you walked in and the guy left the cupboard pretty good for you, right?
He did.
Yeah.
No, he did. And like I'll give you an example. Like Jose Quas he played third for us right out of the gate at Maryland, and he was like drafted like in the 40th round out of high school. He's a kid from Brooklyn, and he was like an 11th round pick of the Brewers as a third baseman 3 years later.
Mm.
Oh, when his bat ran out, they put him on the mound, and the guy pitched in the big leagues for Kansas City and then the Cubs. Like, that's a really good player, man.
Yeah, right. But really good.
Good hitter too, before he became a full-time pitcher. So, we were just blessed. Like, we just had really good guys. I mean, like I mean, a guy like Lau, he's making $10 million in the big leagues now. He's still in the major leagues.
Right, right.
Ron Whit's still in the major leagues. Like, really good players. And there were other guys, like a guy like Martir was as good as any of them. Our catcher, Kevin Martir, is an 18th round pick of the Astros, and he works in pro ball, and he was as good as any of them. And those teams were probably not as successful without Kevin. But he wasn't a big leaguer like the other guys, but he was a hell of a freaking college player.
Right,
As
right, right.
any of the other guys were. So yes, I was lucky. We had some good players there, and I was only there for 5 years, and then Whit Babcock, the AD here, called me at Virginia Tech, and things have worked out well here. Like we won the ACC in 22, and we've had good years since, and we've had massive injuries here, unfortunately, but. Blacksburg, Virginia, it's a great place to live and to raise your kids, and I have no complaints. I really don't, man. None.
To talk some Virginia Tech stuff, just one thing about that 22 season, and then I want to talk just, a few more things about kind of your style, recruiting and coaching, etc. But the 22 season was ridiculous, right? What was it? Was it just the right time that you had been there, getting the recruits? Was it that year was incredibly special? What do you take away 3 years later from that season?
Well, again, we had some really good players. Like we had 6 guys drafted in the top 5 rounds. We had a first rounder, Gavin Cross, who's all those guys are still playing. Gavin with Kansas City still, and we just had really good players, and we had a consistent coaching staff. And here's the other thing, and I've told this to other people before, we had 2 injuries that year. 2. One of them was to a backup catcher, again, named Garrett Giebel, who was a really good player for us in the future, but that year he was backing up Cade Hunter. He wasn't playing. It was a knee injury. You'd have never known about it because the guy wasn't like an everyday player at that point. The other injury was a finger injury to our Friday night starter, Griffin Green, at the time. But it wasn't until the postseason. And it was after the regular season had ended. So we were able to keep our best players on the field the whole year. And unfortunately, that has not been the case over the last couple of years. Like, we've had some really good players and really good teams here. Like last year, we had 7 injuries. Good players. It wasn't just, your average run-of-the-mill backup guy. So anyway, and I'm not trying to turn this into an excuse or anything like that, but that year we were very good because we had good guys. They were healthy. We kept them on the field. You had good breaks as well. We also had a guy named Drew Hackenberg. He came in as a 2-way guy. Didn't pitch in the fall. He was a little tender coming off of high school. And the guy, he was a second-round pick of the Braves the next year. As a draft-eligible sophomore. He was an absolute stud. But I remember going into that spring saying, man, we want to start Hackenberg. He ain't pitching the fall. He's a true freshman. And our guys were like, listen, if he's going to be a starter, let's just start him and see how it goes. Well, it went pretty good. He really good. He still is. That guy's going to pitch in the major leagues for Atlanta, I think, sometime soon. So, we had really good players. We were able to make some fortunate decisions with them. But give them credit. I mean, I think we lost the first weekend series at Georgia Tech and then won 9 straight ACC series with those guys.
Right.
So I give them credit, man. Those guys they're good, but those guys were tough, man. They were tough as the day is long, and that's really what it comes down to. I think you talk about doing these podcasts and trying to get out maybe a message to young guys. Is it about how good you are? Yeah, it is, no doubt. But I think it's also about how tough you are and how diligently you work at the game and how you will not give in. It's hard to beat people that don't give in because they never give in. Yeah. You keep trying to beat them and they just keep coming at you. So it's just as much mental as it is physical, I think. And if you have guys that you're around that are just absolute, just to use lack of a better word, they're absolutely just dogs. They just keep getting after you, and that's the way those guys were. And I think their outcome showed it really.
So let's talk about 2 things there because you've are obviously very humble because you keep saying we got good players. When I hear we got good players, you know what I think? We've recruited some legit guys, right? To have good players, you got to recruit legit players. So I guess I'll ask you this. Yeah. Do you have a recruiting philosophy? Do you have things that you like to look for? Maybe it is toughness, but is there physical traits? Is it running? Is it strength? Is it anything on the mound? Is there anything you could say generally that John Szefc's style for recruiting is this?
Well, one you have to be good enough for the level, whether it's Marist, Maryland, whatever it is, whatever level you're on. You got to recruit guys that are good enough that can. The quicker they can impact the program, the better. Obviously, I already talked about the whole toughness thing.
But is that something when you're recruiting them that you are watching for or researching about? Is that a piece of the, hey, we're going to offer this guy because, yes, we see he could play. It's pretty obvious he could play, but now we're going to go to this next level to find. Is that something that's part of the recruiting piece?
I'd say so, yeah. But here's what I've kind of gotten to in this day and age also of the transfer portal and resources. Some people have more than others. Like, I want to deal with guys that want to be here. Mm. Like, I want to deal with guys that want to come play at Virginia Tech, that want to play in the ACC, that maybe they haven't had everything handed to them. Maybe they don't drive around a Maserati or something like that. You know, they've had to work for a lot of things, and they appreciate opportunity. Like, you know, when you give them stuff that ACC players get in this day and age, they appreciate it. They are low maintenance guys.
I love that. Yeah.
The high maintenance guy, I'm just telling you, that guy's tough because nothing's good enough. The ballpark's not, the locker's not. He only gets 2 pairs of run shoes. He needs 3. The glove's not, the bat's not. Nothing. There's always an issue. You know what I'm saying? But the low maintenance guy, the Steve O'Sullivan, going back to Marist in 2000, I never heard boo from that guy. All that guy wanted was an opportunity, and he got it, and he made the most of it. But there's a lot of there's been several Steve O'Sullivans, not quite as good as Steve O'Sullivan now, but there's a lot of guys like him along the way that, like, we have a guy right now in our program, a guy named Ethan Gibson. This guy works his ass off for everything. He's as tough as the day is long. He had, here's a good story for you. He had to have, like, this cyst taken off the back of his leg last week. And he did it, you know, it was done properly. And he said to me, he's like, I'd have rather just done that with a hunting knife or something like that. Got it done myself. So I said, whoa, hang on a second, man. That's not the way it goes. But I'm telling you, that's the kind of guy that if you tell him to show up at 3 o'clock in the morning to push a peanut across the field with his nose, he'd be there at 2:57. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
The guys you win with. Those are the kind of guys that, you know, you go to their weddings and, like, you respect those guys. And they don't come around all the time. But
no, I love what you say. I mean, I you know, obviously I'm not in coaching the past few years, but that's low maintenance was like always what I would talk about, because if you need me for every little thing, that's not a fun guy to coach. And listen, part of the job is to mentor these dudes, but like low maintenance guys are the guys that you win with. There's just no question about it.
Yeah. And you can talk about everything nowadays and how the game's changed and resources and everything else, but there's certain things that haven't changed that probably will never change. If you can just have guys that you want to be around every day, let's just say it that way. If you want to be around each other and push each other and coach and play and lift and whatever else you do, you'll have a pretty good quality of life outside of all the other distractions that surround college athletics.
Yeah, totally. All right, I want to ask you 2 more things, and I really do appreciate your time. One of them is, I kind of asked this to everybody, but I mean, the last coach, I think you and I had texted back and forth that Gambino was the last guy I had on. Obviously, Mike is a super guy, and now at Penn State, and we talked some. Yeah, he's an awesome guy. What at Virginia Tech baseball? I mean, you could make this a 1 minute answer or an hour answer, so let's keep it shorter. But what's the portal mean to Virginia Tech baseball? Is it something that you're looking to, like what Gambino sort of said was, hey, listen, I'd prefer to take a high school kid, but sometimes I have gaps where someone leaves or something happens. I got to get a portal kid. Like, that's just the situation that I'm in. It could be a draft. It could be something. So I'm not the first dude to ask you about what that means to you in this modern world at Virginia Tech, but any thoughts on how you manage that or what it all means now for you?
Yeah, I would say what Mike said is pretty accurate. I would tell you, like, Mike is a young. I recruited Mike. It's at Sacred Heart in 1995. Like, Mike is a younger version of me. I would say. I would say yes to that, but also if we have a specific need that we can't fill through high school, like for instance, maybe it's like a low slot reliever, and typically the arms you get out of high school are starters because they're the best pitchers.
Right.
And so, like, we have a guy we brought from Texas A&M who's like a low slot right-hand reliever. And the other side of it, sometimes a guy that you might get out of the portal might be a little bit more ACC ready right out of the gate, than a high school guy. Sometimes, not all the time. If I had my druthers, our needs would be filled with high school players, good high school players. If you look at where we've made our best players have come from high school programs. I don't think that's going to change, but I think it's always going to be a mix of good high school players and supplementing them with good guys from the portal.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I've been hearing, and I just was curious if that's the way you kind of see it, and it sounds like it. So,
yep, I agree.
Kind of will lead me to the last question. And anytime I get to this last question, it's already come out a lot in what you've said.
Okay.
But do you have a coaching style, a culture that you try to create? Is there anything that you say is like, if I had one or two things that are the most important to me to be a head baseball coach at Virginia Tech, that I want my program to do this, or this is it the competitiveness? Is it the toughness? Is that something through practice, through lifting, through meetings that you're trying to increase? Like you already said, and I love it, a guy that won't give in, he's tough to beat. So do you see that as part of your job to build that characteristic in guys?
Well, I think what we've tried to create here is like what I would call like a good working culture, meaning that when you come in here, nowadays the guys that you recruit, they're all perfectionists. They work at the game. They understand that they have to work at the game. They have to spend X amount of hours doing X, Y, Z to get themselves to be ACC baseball players. So, like, we just try to create a good working environment, meaning that you come in, we prescribe for you kind of what the day is going to look like, but ultimately, it's also up to you. Like, we can prescribe for you what we're going to do within practice, and okay, I got enough of this done or that done, but I need to do more of this or that. So, for me, the best baseball players are guys that work and complete their tasks outside of practice. Guys that know I need to do X, Y, Z more on top of what's already been done with me in practice. They're workers, like guys that are workers, so that when they get to gameplay, they put so much time in that there's no other option for them but to have success. Like, this failure is not an option. And if they don't have a good day, they can move on. And we spend a lot of money on time on the mental coaching side of things and dealing with failure and moving on from good or bad. But they're able to do that because they're mentally just as strong as they are physically. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
It does. It does. Yeah.
We just try to create like a good working environment with good players that are tough players that can take constructive criticism. And here's the last thing I tell you. that are not egomaniacs. Like, like I can deal with a lot of stuff, and we do deal with a lot of stuff. The one thing that we really try to eliminate from the program is ego guys. Like, just be coachable, man. Like be a coachable guy. Like, I want to hear what's made you successful too. I'm not just going to tell you what's made us successful. I want to hear what's made you successful so we can blend it. And maybe that helps another guy, you know?
Yeah. No, this is funny, and I think you'll love what I'm about to say, but I'll have a lot of kids that I'll work with, and I'll do a meeting with them to assess their talent level to decide if I'm going to take this person on to help them with the recruiting process. And I'll have like an outfielder that's a lefty bat, and he's skinny, he's a center field type. You can tell he's going to hit 1, 2, maybe 9. He runs a 6, 7, and I go, all right, show me your base hit bunting skill. And he goes, I don't do that. And I go, how come? Well, he goes, my high school summer coaches, we don't work on it. I go, I don't give a shit. Pardon my, listen, people, listen. I go, you want to play college baseball and you want to separate yourself from the other kid that does exactly what you do. Learn how to freaking bunt because it's still big in college baseball. So if the practice plan didn't have you bunt, I don't give a damn. Stay after, get another buddy who wants to play college baseball and figure out a way to become great at bunting. Right. So it's kind of what you said. It's like, yes, during the day we're going to run a program for the whole club, but that might not have given you the number of backhands that you needed that day. Well, you know what? Stick around and get some more backhands, dude. It's not that complicated.
That's well said. I mean, I can't say any better than that. You just said it right there, man. So it's good, and that applies to a lot of different things too. So
I do, because you mentioned that. I don't want to leave this hanging because I thought it's interesting. You did mention the mental game. Is there, because one interesting, this is maybe a year ago now, I had Butch Thompson on. Butch is one of the greatest humans and greatest coaches, and he's just got a great way about him. And we talked a lot of mental stuff. And do you guys is that a big part of the in-house part of the program? Do you hire outside help for that? How does that get addressed at Virginia Tech baseball, the mental piece of the game?
There's certain things as far as coaching guys on the process, moving on from the good, from the not so good, shadow bullpen, what your routine is going up to the plate, stuff like that. We coach it for sure, but like for instance, September 2 and 3, in about 2 weeks, we'll have a guy come in, Zach Sorensen, who played in the big leagues for several different teams, who works for Brian Kane's organization.
Yeah,
come in, spend 2 days with us, and it's good to have your guys hear from a different voice, from a different person, even if it's the same exact message your coaches are going to give, for them to deliver it, and then your coaches to back it up and to keep coaching it. I think is important, and we do that. I think the mental part of it is the hardest part because it's easier for guys nowadays to coach hit, pitch, slide, run, like the physicals. But how do you coach the mentals? And the mentals in a lot of cases will get guys deep into pro ball. Because as you mentioned before, the one word you threw out there a little while ago was separate. So like what's going to separate you from the next guy who does things pretty similar to how you do them? Well, the mental side of it might be how you separate yourself. Yeah. Or the bunting game might be how you separate yourself, right? So we spend a lot of time and money on that. It's not cheap to bring these people in, but I do think it's important for our guys to not just be good in the ACC, but beyond it. When they get to the pro level, this is stuff they can take with them, right, to pro ball. And, when you put, 30, 40 guys in a room, some guys are really going to embrace it and wrap their arms around it. And other guys, maybe not so much. But, I can bring you to the room. You still got to buy into it.
Well, you know what happens, and this is me telling you, but we both know this. A lot of times, the mental game, they're ready to listen when the season happens and things don't go right? Like in the fall, they go, well, of course I'll be the 3-hitter starting center for coach, and then maybe they're not, or they play the first series and they strike out 6 times, and now it's like, hold on, what happened September 2nd and 3rd? Like, yeah. They so the smart guys buy into it ahead of time because you don't wait till the season to hit. You don't wait till the season to lift. You do it ahead of time. The mental game needs as much care ahead of time as it does, anything else.
It's just like anything else. Just like any part of preparation. and it's actually sometimes more important than any other part of preparation. But sometimes realize it, as you said, until things go south.
Exactly right.
You want to be able to have a good platform to fall back on, and this gives them that. I think.
Yeah, it does, no question. All right, John. Listen, first of all, I really appreciate it on a Wednesday night before things are getting cooking. You spending time with me. You're the man. Dude, your career has been incredible, and just the journey was great to learn, and it'll be inspiring to people, to realize this program you're running now compared to the guy that was a part-time head coach at Marist, hustling all over the joint to try to make ends meet. Hard work pays off.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and it was good visiting with you and catching up. And if there's anything I can do, just let me know. Okay?
You got it, buddy. You got it, man. That's awesome, John. Thank you.
Take care now.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Game Plan Podcast, sponsored by College Baseball Advisors. Again, this is your host, Wayne Mazzoni. For more information about my recruiting business, please visit collegebaseballadvisor.com. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with John Szefc, head baseball coach at Virginia Tech. I'd like to remind you that our podcast is sponsored by the World Baseball Coaches Convention, which takes place every January, this year January 15th to 17th, 2026, at the Mohegan Sun Casino, a tremendous venue if you have not been. For more information about this great and long-running event, please visit baseballcoachesclinic.com. Again, hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to seeing you next week with our next coach. Thank you very much.